The stagecoach groaned to a halt, its wheels choking up dust that hung thick in the dying light. The driver snapped the reins once more, and the horses snorted, stamping against the cracked earth. A door creaked open. A pale figure stepped down, skirts wrinkled from weeks on the trail. Evelyn Carter clutched her small trunk to her chest as though it were armor. Heat rolled from the ground in waves. Her boots sank into dust that tasted of copper when she breathed. The street stood silent. Boards warped by sun leaned against one another, forming crooked storefronts that stared with blind windows. A tin sign above the saloon groaned on its chain, the wind tugging like an impatient child. No one smiled. No one welcomed. From a shaded doorway, the sheriff tipped his hat without warmth. His gaze lingered, heavy and measuring, before sliding past as though already knowing her fate. Across the road, two men leaned against a water trough, their whispers low, their eyes sharp. Evelyn shifted her trunk from one arm to the other, the weight cutting into her gloves, her pulse cutting into her throat. Hooves struck hard against stone. A rider approached. His shadow stretched long across the dust before him. Samuel Holt, broad-shouldered, face lined like weathered oak, swung down from the saddle without hurry. His coat hung heavy with trailed dust. The girl at his side clung to his hand, a wisp of child in a sun-faded dress. Evelyn's heart stumbled. She expected kindness, maybe a smile. Samuel only nodded once, his jaw tight as if carved from rock. The girl peered out from behind him, wide-eyed. No words passed, only the squeal of the stagecoach brake and the flap of a shutter in the wind. Evelyn gripped her trunk tighter, feeling the ache in her arms, the ache in her chest. They walked. Samuel's boots ground against gravel, each step sounding like judgment. The girl halted behind him until, suddenly, she turned and stared full at Evelyn. The stare was not cold. It was searching. The ranch house stood far out beyond town, where the land stretched flat until it broke against distant canyons. The boards of the house moaned in the wind. A lantern burned dim in the window, yellow against the purple dusk. Evelyn lay that night in a room that smelled of dust and cedar, the ceiling beams above groaning with age. Sleep would not come. Coyotes howled from somewhere beyond the fence line, sharp against the silence. The floor creaked. A small shadow crossed the doorway. Bare feet padded across the boards. Clara climbed onto the bed without asking. She tucked herself close, voice a whisper, warm and trembling. "Can you be Mama?" The question cracked the air like a gunshot. Evelyn froze, trunk still unpacked at the foot of the bed, fear and longing battling inside her chest. The child's eyes shone in the lantern glow, waiting, trusting. Outside, the desert breathed, ancient and merciless. Inside, Evelyn's fear found fracture. The bucket slipped from Evelyn's hands, the rope burning her palms as it plunged into the well with a hollow splash. Sun pressed hard against her neck, a cruel weight that made the horizon shimmer. She hauled the rope back, hand over hand, shoulders aching, the scent of hot dust filling her lungs. Across the yard, Samuel swung a hammer against splintered boards, each strike sharp as gunfire. He spoke little, his silence louder than the blows. Clara sat near the fence, braiding grass into crooked crowns, humming off-key, a sound fragile as birdsong in the dry air. A vulture circled high, black against endless blue. Evelyn shaded her eyes and followed its path, unsettled by how it never broke its circle. At night, the ranch sagged with creaks and restless winds. Evelyn lay awake, listening. Samuel's boots scraped across the floorboards, then stopped. Metal rasped against stone. She rose from her bed, careful not to wake Clara, and peered into the darkened barn. Lantern glow caught the edge of a revolver. Samuel sat alone, whetstone in hand, still whispering against the blade of a hunting knife. His shoulders hunched, his face hollow. His hand trembled. The sound was slow, deliberate, like a prayer said through clenched teeth. Evelyn did not step closer. She returned to her bed, the question in her mind heavier than the desert night. Who was this man she had come to? In town, whispers carried on the wind. Evelyn caught fragments as she passed. Used to be a gunfighter. Blood on his hands. Men still looking. The stares followed her from shop to street, eyes sliding away when hers met them. She walked faster, clutching Clara's hand, heart thudding with the weight of words unspoken. That evening, she found Samuel saddling his horse. He mounted without explanation, spurs glinting in fading light. He rode off toward the canyons, a cloud of dust trailing, leaving Evelyn in the yard with questions gnawing at her. Clara pressed close to her side, whispering, "Papa goes where the dark men are." Evelyn bent down, voice steadied though her stomach turned. "What dark men, child?" Clara only shook her head, braids swinging, eyes wide with secrets too large for her years. The horizon never rested. Riders passed, too many for chance. Their shadows stretched long against the dying sun, faces hidden beneath brims, eyes sharp, their questions sharper. Evelyn watched from the porch, her grip on Clara's shoulders tight. The night after, she woke again to the sound of steel. Samuel sat in the barn, lantern low, revolver in his lap. His thumb brushed the cylinder, slow, heavy. He stared at the weapon as if it stared back. The desert air pressing close. Evelyn turned away, but the scrape of the whetstone followed her, carried through the silence like the promise of a storm not yet broken. Dust rolled across the horizon like a living thing, 6 shadows cutting through the morning glare. Evelyn stood in the yard, hand frozen on the washboard, water dripping cold down her wrists. Clara clutched her skirt, small fingers digging deep. Samuel stepped out from the barn, rifle in hand. His jaw tightened, eyes fixed on the approaching line. "Inside," he said, voice gravel low. Evelyn didn't move. Clara whimpered, the sound thin as a reed in the wind. The riders slowed at the fence, horses snorting, dust clinging to their coats. 6 men, hard faces beneath darker hats, their eyes the color of dried blood. The leader leaned forward in his saddle, mouth bent in a grin that carried no humor. "Samuel Holt," he called, voice rolling like thunder across the dry yard. "Thought we might find you here, hiding behind chickens and women." Samuel's grip on the rifle faltered, the barrel dipping a fraction before he steadied it. The tremor in his hand betrayed him. Evelyn saw it, saw the shadow of the man who once had been feared. "Best send the girl and the woman inside." The leader jeered. What comes next aimed for their eyes. Evelyn's heart hammered. Clara's breath caught against her dress. She turned, guiding the child toward the porch, but stopped when Clara shook her head, eyes wet. "Don't leave him, Mama," she whispered. The word clung like a plea, anchoring Evelyn where she stood. Samuel raised a rifle. The gang laughed, the sound raw and cruel. One rider spat in the dirt, hand hovering near his holster. Another swung a chain loose from his saddle horn, its clink sharp as a bell toll. "Storm's here, Hope," the leader said, voice like a blade. "Time you paid your debt." The first shot cracked, sharp and sudden, splitting the silence wide open. Boards on the fence splintered. Horses screamed. Evelyn dragged Clara down behind a trough. The girl's hands clamped over her ears. Gunfire roared. Dust burst from the earth where bullets struck. Samuel fired back, steadier now, each shot ringing like a memory awakened. One rider toppled from his horse, boots catching in the stirrup as the animal bolted. Evelyn's breath came ragged. A shadow loomed, one of the men dismounting, pistol raised, boots pounding toward her cover. His teeth shone wolf-white in the dust. She snatched the iron skillet from the wash basin, swinging with every ounce of fear and fury. The crack of metal against skull sent him sprawling. His pistol clattered to the dirt. Clara sobbed into her shoulder. Samuel's shout split the din. "Evelyn!" She looked up to see him faltering, pinned by another rider's aim. Without thinking, she grabbed the fallen pistol. It felt foreign, heavy. She raised it, hand shaking, sight blurred by dust and tears. The shot rang. The rider jerked back, blood painting the air. Silence followed, broken only by the moan of wind through the canyon. Smoke curled from the blackened fence, wood charred and broken where bullets had chewed through. Buzzards circled low, wings spread wide, their shadows dragging over the bodies strewn across the yard. Horses wandered riderless, reins dragging in the dust. Samuel knelt in the dirt, rifle limp across his lap, sweat and blood streaking his face. His chest rose and fell in jagged rhythm, breath rattling like dry beans in a tin. Evelyn stood nearby, pistol still in her grip, the weight of it pulling her arm until she let it drop into the dust. The yard held silence, save for Clara's small voice. She reached for Evelyn, tugging at her sleeve, her words trembling but clear. "Can you be Mama?" Evelyn turned, tears blurring the world, until only the child's eyes remained. She knelt, gathering Clara close, feeling the small heart pounding against her chest. She whispered back, steady this time, "Yes." Samuel looked on, eyes hollowed yet wet. His voice broke low. "I wasn't always a rancher." His hand tightened around the rifle, knuckles white. "I was a man with blood on me. Man I shot deserved it, or so I told myself. Truth is, I kept killing even when the reason was gone. That's who they came for. That's who I still am." Evelyn rose slowly. Clara pressed against her. She met his gaze without flinching. "You're the man who stood his ground for her," she said, voice firm. "That's the man I see." The lantern in the house window flickered as wind swept through the yard. Samuel bowed his head, as though the weight of years had finally crushed him. Yet when he looked back, something new sparked behind his tired eyes. Not pride, not glory, just the quiet of a man given a second chance. By nightfall, the dead were dragged beyond the fence, left for the desert to claim. The house stood scarred but still upright, its doorway lit with a glow that spilled against the dark. Evelyn lingered there, child in her arms, Samuel at her side. And so the tale spread. Some swore the bride had never touched a gun before that day, yet shot truer than any man. Others claimed Samuel Holt had called the storm himself, his past clawing back until only blood could settle it. But the story always circled back to the moment when the child asked her question, and the woman answered yes. Old men still tell it by firelight, their voices low, their eyes on the horizon. They say the desert remembers the sound of her shot, and how the dust carried her name long after the buzzards finished their feast. They call her Evelyn Holt now, not a bride, not a stranger, a mother and a legend